Dear students, today we are going to discuss the system of land grants in early medieval period. Before that, we need to know what is the significance of early medieval period, right? Especially with regard to the economic history of India. Early medieval period was a time it also had socio-cultural importance. As per the religious texts of that time, this period was termed as a period of social crisis or social tensions, and it was known as the Kali age. What does it mean? It means the age which witnessed or going to witness the scenes to a great extent. It was something like that. We must say that during this period, India started experiencing the intrusion of the foreign invaders or especially the intrusion of the Muslims. It gradually started and ultimately changed the entire scenario of our political as well as socio-cultural history. Land grants were an important instrument to have a remarkable transformation in the field of agrarian history or in the field of agrarian economy. It initiated feudalization. It also provoked how agriculture expanded, how the tribes they started getting prominence, how trade declined, and how the Vaishyas they were gradually losing their importance in the society. So it was also one of the reasons for the proliferation of caste in Indian socio-cultural scenario. So we are going to highlight the various aspects of land grants, and I hope that my students will definitely enjoy this lecture. I must say, peasant settlements, chiefdoms, and larger state systems interacted with each other and changed accordingly. An increasing number of land grants from circa 600 CE, that means Common Era, became a medium for this expansion in the evolved shortage of workforce and money. Several Marxist historians stress upon substantial changes in socio-economic and political processes due to land grants after circa 600 CE, which led to the formation of Indian feudalism. In other words, the revolutionary changes in land, revenue systems, and agriculture are termed as the beginning of Indian feudalism from circa 700 CE. What is feudalism? I think like that we should have an idea on feudalism. In that case, I should say like that there we can have a comparative analysis between the model of feudalism in the Western world and the model of Indian feudalism, which we experienced in the early medieval period. If I would like to start with the model of European feudalism, dear students, I would like to give you the reference of Marc Bloch, who wrote on European feudalism, and that kind of land revenue structure started by the barbarians who were the Germans. Later on, it expanded all over the Europe and gradually took an institutional form, which also became instrumental for the expansion of the monarchical government to some extent. It was something like a process which talked on patron-client relationship. The king, who was technically the owner of the entire land of his kingdom, he distributed lands to others where he expected service from them. And also we found the serfs, who were the backbone of this system. But in India, the feudal structure was a bit different from what we had seen in Europe. So I think that we need to explore the Indian feudalism so that our students should have an idea about what we had and how land grants were instrumental to initiate Indian feudalism as well. The early medieval economy became structured, modified, and functioned around land. Land became a significant source of revenue. As I have already mentioned, that feudalism changed the mode of economy, and it became one of the main components to run or to transform the economy as well as the society, because it was based on revenue, and revenue was it was actually the main source of income for the rulers. And the economy was definitely agrarian economy, which was, according to Marx, had a different connotation. It was known as the Asiatic mode of production, which was stagnated. There was no scope of development. And here we can situate Indian feudalism, which was signifying or which was directing towards this kind of stagnated growth or development or process. The kings also donated land to individuals and institutions for their service to the empire. So it was something like that. This particular feature, I must say, a bit unique, because we have seen that in Europe, lands were given to the individuals as well as to the religious institutions. Here also we had the same system, but with some new components or with some new ingredients, we must say, that made Indian feudalism more composed and more authoritarian. It's my personal view though, but I think Indian feudalism was something that was a unique feature to understand the dynamics of Indian economy. Indian economy of early medieval period. The system of land grants became an all-India feature by circa 1200 Common Era and incorporated almost all kinds of lands such as fertile, semi-fertile, arid, unfertile, pastures and other ecological kinds. Religious institutions and communities also emerged as landed magnates. The kings granted them land for their favor and services, exactly what they did in the case of Europe. So, in European feudalism, we find a peaceful coexistence between the church and the royals, where feudalism played the role of a key factor or a catalyst. That same was applicable in the case of our Indian history, especially in the context of early medieval period, where we can see not only the individuals were getting land grants, also the religious institutions. It was a step towards to get the support of the religious institutions, the priests, and also to spread Brahmanization or also promote Sanskritization, so that the Muslims who were going to intrude in our country and they were started approaching at that time should be prevented as well, or their influence should be prevented, because we also heard about forcible conversion by the Muslims so that they could have more supporters for them who could be the instrument to spread their religion and who could be the people from their own religion as well. Now the question is, who got the land from the kings? So here we can get the references. What I would like to mention, the kings granted land to the Brahmanas, temples, government officers and royal kinsmen benefited most by land grants and emerged as landlords. So we need to understand the equation between economy, politics, and religion. So when the religious leaders or the priests or the temple, they were getting lands from the king, definitely they were becoming the revenue collectors. And that would definitely create their position in the society more authoritarian and dictative. And they started collecting revenue from the peasants, so they were becoming the seats of power within themselves. So it was something, a structure which was political, and it was also cultural or religious, because religious institutions, they were becoming the lords to some extent, or they were performing as the feudal magnates. So I have found this feature extremely unique, where we can justify the point that history is impartial. We can talk on religion, we can talk on divinity, we can talk on spirituality, but everywhere we also find self-interest. Hunger is the most important component for the growth and development of any civilization. So here, when people, they are in a position to excel, to fulfill their greed, then definitely they are trying to balance their religious role as well as their economic responsibility. Now I would like to say something about the types of land grants. Actually, in this particular time or in this particular period, we found many references of the various types of land grants. So what were they? I would like to mention about these terminologies for the better understanding of my dear students. Land grants generated differential access to power, resources, and intricate relations of domination and subordination in donated areas. We can divide land grants broadly in two categories, that is, religious and secular awards. That I have already mentioned, but they had specific terminologies which I need to highlight as well. Spiritual gifts include Brahmadeva, Devadana, and Agrahara Mangalam, which was started by the ruling dynasties and subsequently followed by chiefs, officials, and feudatories. Lands granted to one or more members of Brahmins are called Brahmadeya. So this kind of land grant, which was not only for a particular Brahmin, for the entire community, that was giving the Brahmins a specific power or a specific kind of authority. So that is quite unique, because according to the Varna system, we know that the Brahmanas, they were supposed to do worship of gods, chanting, and also they were the tutors. They were supposed to teach their pupils. But as the result of land grants, when we have seen how feudalism started flourishing in early medieval period, the Brahmanas, they got another role. They became the revenue collectors, which was not at all the destined role for them as per the Varnashrama. So here we find how self-interest gradually had taken place in the Indian social hierarchical system, and how it got the religious validation or religious sanction as well. Now I would like to talk on Agrahara or the Mangalam type of land grant. Agrahara or Mangalam were tax-free villages donated to Brahmins for their resettlement respectively in North and South India. So it was something like that. This Agrahara or the Mangalam system was destined, or it was connected with that kind of thought that if the Brahmins migrated from one place to another, they should be economically self-sufficient. So it was politically, or perhaps it was a kind of intention by the rulers to spread the Brahmins, to spread the Brahminic culture, and to give the Brahmins a separate identity in the society so that they could be the autonomous rulers by their own virtue of power, position, and prestige. I would also like to give you an idea about Devadana. Devadana was land given to temples, monasteries, and other religious establishments, both Brahmana and non-Brahmana. You can ask me the question like that, who were these non-Brahmana religious institutions? I am talking about the Protestant religions like the Buddhist and the Jain monasteries, which also got land in the form of grants during that particular period. So when we talk on Devadana, that means this particular grant was not only given to the Brahmin temples, this grant was also given to the Buddhist and the Jain monasteries as well. That's why it was mentioned that lands given to the non-Brahmana institutions. Such as Brahmadaya and temples played an essential role in the development and expansion of the agrarian base. Consolidation of state power, peasantization of Sudras, and social differentiation. So as I have already mentioned about the proliferation of caste. And why this proliferation it took place? Because as you know, like when Indian feudalism started developing, started expanding, it definitely showed the way for the downfall of trade. So the Vaishyas, they started losing their omnipotence. And this kind of situation also got religious sanction, because in the religious texts of early medieval period, it was clearly mentioned that Brahmanas as well as the Vaishyas, they were not allowed to go for overseas. Or in other words, overseas trade had a fatal blow during this period. So the Vaishyas, as they were losing their importance in the society, gradually they stepped down in the social hierarchical system and they became the Sudras. So here we find how the Sudras, they rose in number, and also the Sudras, they started to give their labor more as the peasants for the consolidation of the Indian feudal system. So technically they were playing the role of the serfs in India if we make a comparison with the European feudalism and the Indian feudalism. And definitely how the monarchy started to have more power, or we must say the consolidation of state power happened. That is quite obvious because now the monarchs, they started getting the support of the religious institutions. So it was something like a nexus, it was something like a peaceful coexistence between politics and religion. And we can also talk on social differentiation. That means proliferation of caste made huge changes in the society. The Vaishyas, they started losing their power, the Sudras, they rose in number, and the Kshatriyas, they became more powerful with the help of the Brahmanas, and the Brahmanas Not only they were at that time the priests or the messengers of God, they also became authoritarian by exercising their economic power over the society. So the exploitation at that time was at a huge level, and the peasants or the marginalized who were the backbone of this Indian agrarian system at that time, they had to suffer to a great extent. Dear students, now I would like to tell you something about the secular grants. Like that, as I have already mentioned about the religious grants, now I would like to say something about the secular grants, and here you would be able to connect with the European feudalism or the model of European feudalism, because these secular grants in the Indian context, these were mostly given to the royal officials and also to those people who were attached to the administration. Apart from this, the priests, sometimes they used to get secular grants as well. So here we can find regional variation which I need to highlight. We find frequent references to awards to ministers, kinsmen, military commanders and others between the 10th and the 12th centuries from Tamil Nadu, Bengal, Bihar, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Assam and Orissa and other parts of India. Officials enjoyed income from their land grants, including taxes and levies, irrespective of the tenure of these levies. It is important because it created another class of landlords other than Brahmanas. So here we find decentralization of power. So Indian feudalism created the niche for decentralization of power and also various levels of exploitation over the marginalized or over the mass of the country. So here I would like to mention the Marxian approach with regard to class struggle and class exploitation. Definitely Indian feudalism, it initiated or it provoked the idea of class exploitation. And we can also witness the presence of have and have-nots. The kings, the royals, the religious institutions, they were definitely having power, prestige, and the marginalized, the poorer sections of the society, the Sudras, the untouchables, they were belonging from the have-nots. So here we find how the marginalized or the ordinary people, they got extremely exploited in this particular land revenue structure. I would also like to mention the views of eminent historians with regard to land grants in early medieval period. I would like to start my argument with Upinder Singh. According to her, land grants in Indian society made the position of the Brahmanas more authoritarian. And also they became exploitative and they started exploiting or extracting the peasants. So definitely it went against their image and it created a kind of criticism against the position of the Brahmanas in the society. Here I would also mention the view of B.D. Chattopadhyay. What B.D. Chattopadhyay wanted to say that these Brahmanas, as you have already seen that how they have shifted to various places, they have migrated and they got villages in the form of land grants. These Brahmanas, they influenced the tribal people, and these tribal people from early medieval period onwards, they started becoming a part of the Indian hierarchical system or the Indian caste society. They got an identity. They were the untouchables, but they were the people who represented the then Indian society as well. So by this way, their inclusion definitely made the caste system or the social hierarchical system more dynamic. I would also mention what Ram Sharan Sharma wanted to say. According to him, if we would like to decipher the sources of land revenue system in early medieval period, then we have seen that all these the various land revenue systems, they were having some kind of a connection with land grants. And we can know about these land grants in the form of charters or in the form of inscriptions. And from these charters, or from charters means the royal edicts or the royal orders. So in the form of these charters, which were also inscribed, as I have mentioned about the inscriptions on the stone or on the copper or on the gold or on the silver plates, we come to know about the personal details of the kings who used to donate the lands. So what I am trying to say, I am repeating that land grant system was something which we could identify through the charters, and these charters were the royal edicts, and from these charters we have come to know about the personal details of those who used to donate these lands. Apart from the kings, the queens or the royal women during the early medieval period, they also donated lands to the religious institutions and to the individuals as well. So here I have mentioned the views of three historians who were Upinder Singh, B.D. Chattopadhyay and Ram Sharan Sharma to make my argument more diversive and more interesting for my dear students. Like to conclude my lecture on land grants in early medieval period, I must say these land grants made the Indian economy more crucial as it increased the level of exploitations. So here I cannot deny the position of the Marxist historians who wanted to apply the Marxian approach of class struggle and class exploitation, which I have already discussed. Apart from that, I want to conclude by saying it is evident that land grants are important not only for the history of land system, but also for that of crops, crafts, trade, money economy, taxation, towns, irrigations, migration and settlements. In view of the growing interest in the economic history of India, it is essential to prepare a systematic list of land charters in regional and chronological order. What we need most for researchers and advanced students is a preparation of the analytical contents of all such charters on statistical lines. So I hope my lecture would definitely enlighten my students to think more on land grants in early medieval period, so that in future they could contribute to a great extent for the preparation of more analytical texts or to conduct more analytical and statistical or qualitative researches on this particular theme. Thank you.